Good morning. Am I working? I think so. I can see levels. I have a camera. Hopefully my lips are in sync. Good morning, everybody. I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to Aboriginal elders and peoples from other communities who may be taking part in this live stream today. I've just noticed that the camera is kind of tilted, but hopefully you don't notice. Which way? Right before I was going to start the live stream, I had the preview view up on here, and the camera was really super dark. And so this is the camera that I did have mounted on the tripod right where you are sitting at this very moment. And something has gone strange with the settings on like the exposure, the ISO setting or something. And it looked like the room was in almost total darkness. You could just make out a little bit. So I had to quickly pull that out, grab another camera, swap things around, and the tripod's a little bit tilted. But we can just pretend we're all intoxicated or something. I hope you're having a great weekend so far. And what am I doing? I don't know. Quitting out of things, checking the chat. Oh, we've got a whole bunch of people here. Take the lens cap off. Yeah, lens cap is here. No lens cap on this one. No, I don't know what it was. I will figure it out. Yes, Peter said mad typing sounds. So, one of the things that I have not yet got sorted out is how to get audio directly from the output of my computer into the ATEM Mini Pro, because I'm using the ATEM to do the encoding and the streaming now. So what I've got is my microphone. The receiver for my microphone is plugged directly into the ATEM, and on things like the intro video I can't play any music because I'm capturing the video into the ATEM, but it doesn't capture the audio, only the video. So I have to ooh, the stream topic. Okay, I gotta check in Discord. So to play that audio at the start, I had the video playing in OBS. I got the MP3 of the soundtrack playing in QuickTime Player, playing through the speakers of the computer being picked up by the microphone. So that's why you could hear me typing. I need to fix my streaming setup. It's all a bit of a halfway mess. Yeah, Stephen says a mixer that outputs to the ATEM. Yep, I've got a couple of mixers. That's the sort of thing I need to set up. I just haven't. Yes. Yes, Mike says I need to get the PC to stream the audio out by the HDMI to the ATEM. In theory, that's what should be happening. I haven't been able to make it work. Even when in the macOS audio selection, like the control panel for the audio out, I select HDMI as the audio output. The ATEM sees nothing. Anyway, I will fix that minor technical issue at some point. In the meantime, what do I need? A camera, a microphone, and you. And we're all good. So, sorry, so it was Aaron who said check DM in Discord. Okay, DM in Discord. I am going to open Discord and see what that is about. Aaron said, ooh, SuperLab, cool. Oh, with the microscope and everything, that is cool. I'm gonna, hang on, I've got to download, open original. I'm gonna grab this and it's zoomed in, which means this is not necessarily going to look that fantastic because I've taken a small image and zoomed it in. Aaron just DM'd me this. SuperLab, a variation on the Superhouse logo with a microscope instead of a house inside the @ symbol. That's cool. Thanks, Aaron. Right. So, what are we doing today? What are we building today? The Celtic Beast says. No Electronics Lab? It may take more than 2 hours. It's going to take way more than 2 hours. So we are going to need, yes, more than 2 hours. More than 2 hours to build it, but we can talk about it. We can talk about fun things. We can have dreams. This is the sort of thing I've been dreaming about for a long time. So the very quick background to bring people up to speed, although I think most of you have heard me talk about these things many times before, is for the last couple of years I've been working almost exclusively out of this room and the back of the garage. And so I've got, I can't remember the number, it's something like 24 square meters of workspace here, plus a bit of room out the back. And I've got a double garage that has shelving, like floor to ceiling racks down all the way down both walls, plus crossways, and at other places storing things like stock for Freetronics and Superhouse, and project boxes, and just all the tools and stuff that I need. And I'm jammed in here, so we do not have a usable garage. It is barely usable from a productivity point of view in terms of using tools, because there just isn't enough physical space, there isn't enough bench space to do anything, and it's been very convenient in terms of having everything right here and being able to just walk out and my whole lab is here. But having acquired these KO A4 pick and place machines recently, it's really pushed me ahead with something that I've been thinking about for a while, which is the SuperLab. And it's an idea I talked about maybe a year and a half ago. I think I brought this up. It's been discussed a little bit on Discord. And the idea is that it is my existing workplace transplanted into a better location that's out of my house, which allows a number of things. One is it makes it easier for other people to come in and participate. So I could get other people working with me, or I could have people come in to be able to help them with their projects. And part of the motivation for this is working on things like wheelchair hacking projects, or custom assistive technology devices, or modifying home automation gear to help people in their specific circumstances with whatever they need. Trady says, when are you buying some plastic injection molding machines? No, I'm not going to go down that path. Yeah, so Bob P says, looks bigger than 24 square meters. Yeah, it does actually look quite big. And if I switch to, hang on, I'm going to switch to a side camera, this one. So you're looking down the bench here. This actually looks really big. So the camera you're on right now is kind of wide angle. It's a Logitech Brio, and it's almost against the wall, and it's looking straight down towards the opposite wall. So if I get up and walk over here, it'll look like I am a long way away from you, but it's not actually that far. Like, there is a chair here with a computer and a microscope. So if I take 1, 2, 3 and a bit steps, 4 steps, I am back at my chair again. So that is not that far away. In fact, when Sion came to visit me after watching live streams, one of the first things he said when he walked into the back of the lab was, it's a lot smaller than I thought it was. So yeah, it looks like it's really deep, and it's not. So yeah, and you can see the, which way? You can see the width that way. That corner there is where the little bathroom is cut out of it. So you can see that corner behind me. So that corner where the 3D printer is in the enclosure is, it's probably about 4 meters away from me. All right. So the general concept is that I want to, I'm thinking about the things that I do in here and how to make it more efficient in a different location, or if I'm going to relocate, this is the sort of opportunity to really think about what I'm doing and set up whatever the new situation is in the best way possible. It's when you have really big changes that you then have the chance to think, okay, this particular thing isn't working so well, or I need to change this. And yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about it. And in that view, it looks about the same length as my workroom, but yours is wider. Yeah, so this is, it's almost square. If you look at it on the plan, it's almost square with one corner cut out for that little bathroom and one wall at a slight skewed angle, because our boundary wall, that wall there, is on the boundary of the property. And our property is not a rectangle. It's like a rectangle, but one of the sides is skewed in. So it's like a weird trapezium or something, whatever you would call it. Okay, so by way of background, I've been thinking about the kinds of things that I do and the kinds of space that I need if I'm going to transplant what I currently do. And I should have a pen and paper or something to take notes and get some feedback from you. Oh, cool. The link is in general Discord. Discord general now? I'm not sure what that's related to. Alright, so also I should point out, I'm going to drop a link to Discord in here. Before I go too much further into all of this in chat, if I go to, I think this is the link. It should be. So that link is the invitation to Discord, and in Discord I have just created a new topic called SuperLab Planning. I think it's called SuperLab Planning. SuperLab Planning. Yes, it is. Okay, so in the general section there is a topic called SuperLab Planning, and I'm going to... Ooh, already there is a good suggestion. Okay, so Austin said have decent sized rack and rack space to use OXRS hardware to run the lab. Absolutely. I have two 42U racks in my garage. So I've got two full-size server racks in the garage, and at least one of those will be fitted in there. And in fact, I've already got a location for it on the plan, which is not optimal, and we'll get to that. I've got lots of ideas. I've been writing notes and... Andy said requirements, play area for Bonnie and Astra. I've been writing notes and things about this for years. In fact, before I set up this current lab, the very first time when we were doing the big renovations, so this is like 8 years ago, I wrote a document which was all of the requirements, and it included things like double door access. So that's the reason that I have the double doors that you can't actually see from that camera angle. So I've got double doors going from the back of my garage straight through into this lab area. The reason for that was I wanted to be able to do things like bring in a laser cutter or a CNC machine and not have to negotiate that standard door width. I wanted to be able to bring things into the garage and then from the back of the garage straight through double doors, bring them in here, take stuff out if I need to. So things like double door access was on my list, and that's why I've ended up with so many PowerPoints around here, because I planned that right from when this construction was done. It's why there is a hard floor in here, and many other things which were done because I was thinking in advance of how to set this space up to be good as like an R&D lab sort of environment. Aaron says, robot vacuum with Wi-Fi can also perform sentry duties. We just got to attach a laser to it. Yes, DIN rails, lots of them. Yep. Yeah, Freddie says, tip, take the square meters you think you need and multiply by 1.5, or if you can afford it, multiply by 2. Yeah. Actually, one of the tips I heard from Evil Steve, who many of you would know, was look at your floor plan when you're laying things out on the floor plan And on the corner of every piece of equipment, like say the corner of a rack, draw a 1.5 meter radius circle around it, and you need that sort of clearance everywhere you go. So whatever you've got within your space, you basically need to move everything further apart and give yourself more room. Whatever space you think you need more. All right. Okay, Dodgy says you don't want a CNC near electronics, too messy. Yeah, okay, that is one of the issues that I've got here in the current space. So, getting back to what I was talking about before, about the whole question of what kinds of things I do. I've got it down to 4 work areas, that like 4 general concepts or work modes, I suppose you would think of it as. First work mode is where I am right now in the R&D lab sort of part of it, where I've got my computer, I've got electronics bench, I've got test gear, soldering irons, and boxes of parts over my bench. On the far wall that you can see there's a whole wall of little drawers full of components, so that's like prototyping parts, things like M2 bolts in every length from small to long, and M2.5 in every length, M3 in every length, and like every value of variable resistor and connectors and yeah, just lots of stuff. So basically this room is like, it's like a personal J car almost, or like a personal Radio Shack. If I want something, it is probably here and reasonably well organized. So this is the R&D portion of it, where I work on new designs, assemble prototypes, and do testing and debugging and all of those sorts of things. So the R&D lab is zone 1. Well, not that there is any ranking to them or order, but that's just the first one. Okay. The second zone is packing and stock storage. So this is something that I do in the context of both Freetronics and Superhouse. I've got like industrial racking, like shelving in the garage, lots and lots of it. And it's floor to ceiling with boxes of product. So there are containers which have got USB to serial converters and Freetronics 11s and, you know, whatever it is that you see on the Superhouse or Freetronics site, there are boxes and boxes of it in the back of my garage. And every working day of the week, I used to do it 6 days a week, but I gave up on shipping on Saturdays because there really is no point, because there's no postal collection on Saturdays anyway. So now 5 days a week, I go out to the packing bench. Well, first I print all of the orders, I print all of the shipping labels, I complete the customs forms, I take all of that stuff out to the packing bench, which has a big set of packing scales on it. There's a big roll of bubble wrap, there are tape dispensers and knives and shipping like the labels, the sender labels. There is a big stack of boxes. I've got boxes in multiple sizes. So I fold the boxes up, I pack the orders, tape them all up, put the labels on them, and then they go into an out section. So part of what I've got out there is a big open top box, which is my out box. And when I pack the orders, I put them in the out box, and that pile is what then has to go down to the post office every day. So order packing and shipping is zone number 2, and I need to take care of that. Right now that is really cramped. It is jammed into this area at the back of the garage, and it has really taken over and prevented me from being functionally useful in what I'm going to call zone number 3, which is mechanical fabrication. And that is the more workshop-y sort of things. And this is coming back to what Dodgy was pointing out with the CNC being near electronics. Right now my CNC machine is here in the lab. So is my laser print. Sorry, laser printer. There is a laser printer, yes. But the laser cutter and the CNC machine are just over there inside the door, just inside the double doors of the lab, in the same room as all of the other stuff, which needs to be kept clean. And a CNC machine and a laser cutter ideally should not be sitting right there side by side, doing things to each other. Not that the laser cutter won't affect anything, but the CNC machine, yeah, you can get vibration and it makes swarf, which you've then got to clean up, so you don't want to get swarf into things. That's bad news. That really should be enclosed and it should not be in this room. The only reason it's in here and not in the back of the garage is there is no physical space in the back of the garage. So in the garage I have a floor standing drill press, like a big pedestal drill. There's a bench sander, bench vise. There's another bench mounted drill press. All the usual tools, like a whole bunch of cordless tools like drills and saws and files and hammers, and I've got bolts and nails and screws and things all categorized. They're all on shelves labeled. So it's actually quite well organized out there as well. But I have a problem with lack of storage for stock, things like aluminium tube stock and timber and those sorts of things. And I also have a serious lack of space for a workbench out there. I've only got a narrow strip of bench which also gets used for packing, and it's really not that practical. I can't really work on things. And what I'm finding recently, as I've been working more on sort of robotics sort of projects, I've been doing a lot more mechanical oriented stuff. But even things like making enclosures or modifying enclosures for things. Say you're working on a little project and you've got a little plastic, like an ABS enclosure, and you need to cut some holes in it for switches and connectors so you can put your circuit board in it and make something. That process for me at the moment is really frustrating just because of lack of being able to use the tools properly. Like ideally I would chuck that in the CNC machine and have it cut the holes out of the enclosure, but running the CNC machine in here is a pain and it makes a mess and it's just awkward. And using tools in the back of the garage is really difficult because everything is really jammed in. There's just too much. So I need some space for doing even basic mechanical things without doing them here in this space, which I should be keeping clean. Okay. So, Andrew said possibly something to consider. Your current lab might also be available as a zone, although I do remember you saying it'd be nice to convert it to a guest suite. Yep. Okay, so this is one of the meta questions of, do I relocate everything? Do I relocate some things? Do a split location arrangement? I think I'll get back to that. And I think I'm fairly clear on that now. I was going backwards and forwards on it, and I'm fairly clear on that now, but we will get to that. So, largely prompted by zone number 4, which is the manufacturing zone. And this is kind of what I'm lacking at the moment. In terms of just R&D, if I just wanted to make individual boards and prototypes and things, the room I'm in right now is really, really good. It's fantastically well set up. I've got all the tools I need right here. The problem comes when I want to make 100 of something or 500 of something, and that's where I have a problem. In the past, what I've done with Freetronics in particular is outsource all of that sort of thing to companies like Scotchery, who I spent the entire live stream talking about last week. But I want to be able to do more of that directly locally, and for a few reasons. One of the reasons is I want to be able to do rapid turns on small numbers of items. So I suppose in terms of characteristics, rapid turn, small quantity, potentially customizations, like per person. Like if someone comes to me and says, I want a version of this that does this, I need to be able to do it. And direct hands-on quality control, which is important for a couple of my contracting clients at the moment. And we have to do things that go into really harsh environments, things like some problems we've been having with a mining truck recently for the water cannon project, and things that go out onto construction sites and have to be exposed to the environment for months at a time, sitting out there on a pole with solar panels on them. So there are there are projects that I work on where I really want direct hands-on control of the manufacturing process. And right now, that is difficult. And that is the reason that I started looking around for pick and place machines, which is what really kicked this whole thing off in the first place. What my original plan was to find a second-hand pick and place machine and do more of the 3D Tetris, try to shove everything aside in the back of the garage and make enough room to be able to set one up in there. And it became fairly clear that that's not practical. What's happening at the moment is I've got these fixed boundaries and I'm trying to jam more stuff into it, and no matter how much shuffling you do, at a certain point there just isn't any more space to compress things. And I've got to push everything apart. Dodgy says, why are mines so bad? Dust. In this situation, yeah, I'm not going to... So my client, this particular client, is normally quite open about me talking about things, but there are certain things where I shouldn't explain too much because I don't want to cause any problems for him commercially in terms of his relationships with his clients and those sorts of things. So I'm not going to go into it in great detail, except to say underground mines are like hell. They're a really bad environment. They can be extremely hot, very humid. Everything can become very acidic or loaded with different, like the water that gets on everything you end up with chemicals leaching out of rocks. And so it's a sort of place where you take a bit of electronics that you would think is indestructible and you bolt it on a truck and send it down there, and within 2 weeks it looks like it's 10 years old. It's just been destroyed. There are chemical reactions, there are, yeah, all sorts of bad stuff. It's a horrible, horrible place. So, yeah, making stuff that survives in that environment is really hard. Much harder than I expected. Much harder than most people expect. And as Stephen W. says, or a big machine misjudges something and flattens it. Yes, that happened not long ago. Bit of a misjudgment, and all of a sudden, yeah, truck intersects part of the infrastructure, and yes, bad things happen. So, okay. Yeah. Now, where was I? Okay, so far I've talked about 4 zones, and the 4th one is the one that I have been really missing because so far I haven't had it as a zone. The first 3 I actually kind of do have as zones at the moment. I've got the R&D area, I've got the packing area, like packing and shipping, and I've got a mechanical area, which is kind of wherever it fits in the garage. And also the other thing is that part of the mechanical area is being able to do this kind of not quite mechanical, crosses over into it, is being able to do things like lay out wiring looms. I want to be able to make things like pegboard templates for wiring looms so that they can... I'm not going to get into this process too much, but it's for things like making wiring looms to go on trucks or cars where you have connectors at multiple locations and it might branch out in different directions. You need to be able to lay out the cable, get all the lengths correct, terminate all of the connectors, have heat shrink in all the right places, have everything sealed in the right places. That sort of thing is normally done by laying stuff out on a large template sort of board, and then I just don't have space for that sort of thing. So when I do things like make temporary wiring looms for things like the water cannon, I just do it here on the bench with whatever space I have. I don't have room to lay out like a proper wiring harness assembly area. Yep. So, please excuse me, drink time. All right. Now, the manufacturing side of it, Zone 4, is really what I do not have at the moment. What I've been doing for Superhouse product in particular is using what is really set up for R&D, very small volume, for making stuff for production, and it's not ideal. Things like Mick will Make It, my little pick and place machine here, it's okay, it does all right, but it's slow. Like I'm at the moment I'm averaging, according to OpenPNP, it's reporting somewhere around 400 components per hour, 370 components per hour, up to 420, like somewhere in that region. It depends on a whole variety of factors. Like you'll see in pick and place machine specs, you'll see components per hour, CPH, as a number, and they'll give you a number like 6,000 or 12,000 or 3,000. Those numbers are almost meaningless, because the question is, what is it based on? Is it with vision turned on or off? Is it accounting for travel time for distant feeders versus close feeders? So the way those numbers are reported, it's kind of bogus and super optimistic. It's what a friend of mine used to say is when marketing overtakes engineering. And so you get a number for a specification and marketing goes, let's make that higher because our competition's is higher, so we'll just change that number. So the actual real world performance that I get out of my current pick and place machine, according to OpenPNP, which is tracking, like at the end of every job, it gives me data and it says X components placed in Y seconds, average blah CPH. So it's an actual real world number for the job that it just ran, for the board that it just populated. And it's doing at the moment around 370 to 420 components per hour, like as a real world number. And so it means that for a moderately complex board, I was just going to grab one as an example, the Rockling board that is the little FPGA based Theremin front end that we're doing for the Open Hardware MiniConf, that board, not even doing all the parts, this is just probably 70% of the parts because some still have to be put on by hand. That board takes around 9.5 minutes to run one board, and really it's a sort of board that should be assembled in about 1 minute. So that sort of speed has a scaling effect when you're trying to do more than prototype quantities of things. If I put a board in there and it takes 10 minutes or 15 minutes to populate a board, and I want to do a few of them, I've got to take into account things like how long has the solder paste been exposed and how long are other parts of the cycle waiting on the machine. Anyway, the point of all of this is that what I have here right now is fantastic for R&D purposes and building small volumes of things, building 5 boards or a few. But this is one of the problems that I've faced with things like trying to maintain stock for Superhouse for things like the IORJ45 breakouts and the RAC32s and light switch breakouts and lots of the really popular sorts of things. A lot of the time they're just out of stock, and it's because I could, for things like the 24 port light switch, the RJ45 breakouts, I could set aside a day to assemble those, and at the end of the day I would have 6 or 8 of them done. That's the sort of inefficiency that I've got at the moment. Making one or a couple of those is fine. Trying to make 50 of them so that I've got them sitting in a box on the shelf ready to ship whenever anyone orders one, and then I don't have to care about stock for a while, that is hard. So what happens is that all of my stock levels are sort of bouncing just off zero, and it will get to a situation where I run out of something, and then I'll quickly make, oh, okay, I've got to make 6 of those, or I'll make 8 of those, and at least then I'll have a non-zero number, so the next few people that come along, they've got them to order. But then I'm the squirrel chasing its, the dog chasing its tail. Yeah, I'll do a few of those, and then I'll go, oh no, a few of those, and then oh, a few of those. What I should be doing is saying, I'm gonna make 100 of them, and then I don't have to care about stock for that for a while, and solve the problem in a slightly longer term way. To do that, I need a much better manufacturing setup. I need to be able to do solder paste better, and that has been improving dramatically with Xeon's vacuum stencil system, which I've been using extensively since he shared the prototype design files with me, and I printed the first one and tested it. I've been using that extensively. I've got so I just a day or two ago I printed a second one, so I've got 2 of those solder stencil boxes now, and so I've got these are for client projects, and that's for a client project. This one is for the Rockling. You can see the fish shape inset just there. So this is where the FPGA Theremin board mounts, the Rockling V1.0. And I used this one a couple of days ago to make a couple of the Rocklings. This one I just printed. I haven't even used it yet. This is the Rack 32. So there's a Rack 32 PCB, because last week fits in perfectly. Very, very nice. And I just added a little half circle cutout to make it easy to, get your finger in and pull the board out. Last week I assembled 8 Rack 32s. I did 4 of the PCB antenna version, and I did 4 with the UFL antenna socket. But that's 4 of one SKU and 4 of another SKU, and then they just disappear. So doing things like assembling these, I need to be doing like 50 of them, not 4 and 4 of them. So yeah, efficiency, that's what I was talking about. And we are going to get onto the design of the SuperLab. This is all background in terms of setting out the expectations and the requirements. So the solder paste stencil thing is working brilliantly. I've been using that for a few boards. So thanks, Xeon, for sharing that. And yes, Xeon, you just walked in. Backplate on the screen. I was just saying that I printed a second one of those boxes, which I think you've already seen a photo of, and I've been doing these for client projects and also for, I think that, yeah, that's the interesting one with the Rockling fish PCB. I'm going to grab a Rockling PCB and stick it in there because it's cool. I don't have a populated one yet, but I can at least show you the Rockling PCB. So that is the Rockling PCB, the front side and the back side. So the up 5K, that right there, the diagonally, the 45-degree angle part, that is the up 5K FPGA. And what do we have here, there, and there? Those arrays of parts. Those are the analog front ends for the Theremin input, for the 2 antennas that allow you to move your hand around and play different things. So analog front ends going into the FPGA, and that then goes to a codec so that it can do audio generation, so digital analog sort of stuff. And then output, there's an audio amplifier, and output at the tail. So stuff comes in from here and it goes out the tail. There's a socket here for headphones for an audio output. There's a connector here for speakers. So the idea is that you can use this to make music using an FPGA. And that is the vacuum plate for doing the solder paste on it. Although that's upside down. I put it in that way because this board is assembled upside down. That's the front of the PCB, and all the parts are on the back. So it actually goes backwards onto the solder stencil. And I did this by taking the DXF. This was done in KiCad, and then the outline of this was done as a DXF, I think originally in Inkscape. That was done by Andrew Nielsen. So he sent me the DXF. I then imported it into Fusion 360 and projected it onto the base plate, and then just cut the shape of the fish out of it, which worked really, really well. And then there were a couple of places where I just deleted a couple of holes. So if I chuck this over here, yeah, we're chasing a squirrel at the moment. What you'll notice is that just because of the position of this, there are a couple of the holes. Oh look, it's doing some weird autofocus thing on that camera. That is strange. What's going on with that? I don't know. Oh, it's displaying the autofocus on the screen. Autofocus, the manual focus assist. Yeah, the focus assist. So there should have been a hole there, and a hole there, and a hole here, and one here. And just because of the position of the PCB, when I did the projection of the shape in Fusion 360, I did I did the extrude or whatever it is to cut it out, and I just deleted the holes that were overlapping with the edge right there and there, because otherwise there would have been like a semicircular hole coming up beside the PCB and part of a hole slightly under the PCB. So there would have been a cavity going around it, and I just made it neater by deleting those holes. Anyway, so what was I talking about? Sion says, so they are being panelized, you're going to assemble them one at a time? Yeah, these particular ones are not panelized, and that is, originally the idea was to have them panelized, and I was going through, so I was doing this through JLC PCB, and they could not panelize a non-rectangular PCB. Well, they can probably do circles and other things, I don't know. But I submitted it for panelization, and they got back in touch with me and said, no, sorry, we can't panelize this. I could have done panelization myself and sent it off, but it was in a kind of time-critical situation, and I figured that I would go with what I knew, and we'll just do it this way. And also, the number of these that we're producing is not that high. Basically our goal is to make 60 of them, so it's not like we're doing 500 or anything. With 60, it's okay. We can do these individually. Okay. Now, oh yes, perfectly tiles. So as Andy points out, it's a shame because the Rockling perfectly tiles the plane, no gaps. Should panelize really easily. Well, kind of, except that when you panelize, you need spacing between them for the little connectors and things so that you can break it off. So if you're doing mouse bites. The other thing is that with panelization, you end up with nasty edges, and being fully routed, these are really smooth. So they've got a CNC router that cuts out the shape of the PCB. With panelization, you end up with little, if you use the mouse bites, you end up with the little holes drilled along the edge, and then you've got to sand the edge of the PCB to make it smooth. And doing that for all the PCBs would be a pain. Or if you use V-grooves, which you couldn't because there is no straight edge on this entire PCB. So if you use V-grooves, where they use a V-shaped cutting bit and they use the milling machine to cut partway through the PCB, and then you snap them off, like these panels. Where did they go? Like these panels here. These are light switch panels. These are V-grooved. It's got rails top and bottom, and there is a slot that is partly milled through between every PCB, and then you can snap them apart. Then you still end up with nasty little fibers and things, which is not ideal. You don't end up with a nice smooth edge, whereas this one, it's all perfectly smooth. It's a beautiful finish. So that's one of the advantages of fully routed PCBs. Okay. Some call it fun. Are you familiar with the kitchen triangle, stove, fridge, and sink for optimal flow? Is there a similar rule for production? Yes, I am familiar with that. In fact, I talked about that in a conference talk at LCA, I think about, when was it? 10 years ago. I did a talk called Use the Force, Linus. I'm going to find it, because this was a fun talk. This was one that Andy collaborated on me with. Use the Force. Because we did flying a gesture-controlled drone. And yeah, at the start of the talk, I was talking about my experience at school doing a project. So a school exercise, I suppose we did, was designing a kitchen, and it was all about time and motion study stuff. So how do you arrange things physically within a kitchen environment to be able to have easy flow between the different work locations and optimal positioning. Where is this video? Somewhere. Come on, I've got to find this. Oh. LCA. I don't even remember what year it was. I don't know. I'm not going to spend too much time looking for that. Anyway, I did a talk years ago about the context of the talk was about user interface design and usability and how we interact with technology. And I was using the whole workflow analogy as an intro to thinking about how you as a human interact with objects around you and how to set up the environment to operate in an optimal way. So correct positioning of things, making user interfaces intuitive, and ideally making them disappear entirely. So I think the mantra I had in that particular talk was, the best UI is no UI. It's when the interface has vanished. You don't even know it's there. The object is doing exactly what it should without you having to think about, how do I control this, or how do I achieve the end result? If you have to think about how you're interacting with something, then the UI is still there. It's still in your way. It needs to be invisible. Okay. Yeah, so LCA 2011 in Brisbane. Okay, so it was 10 and a half, nearly 11 years ago, Andy. Yeah, all right, so getting back to the topic. What was I talking about? That's right. So the point of all of this is getting you to looking at some ideas. Now, I've got some stuff in floorplanner.com. I'm gonna open this up and I'll show you where my thinking has ended up in relation to this. But you do still need just a little bit more background. Now, because I've been talking conceptually about building a SuperLab for a few years now, and a number of people have known about it, so quite some time ago, maybe a year and a half ago, Lachlan, who I know through Melbourne Hackerspace, is a good friend of Andy's, and probably many of you here would know him, said to me quite a long time ago, if you are seriously thinking about setting up the SuperLab as a place to do things like build assistive technology projects and have people come in and work on things with them, maybe he could provide some space for me. And that's because he has two factories. I'm going to once again be a little bit circumspect about what I reveal, because I'm not entirely sure what he's comfortable with me revealing. But so his business makes equipment for production lines, and they have two factories side by side. They're ballpark 300 square meters per factory. So they've got something like 600 square meters of factory space. And because of changes in the way his business works, like they've changed the type of setup that they do, assembly lines need a lot of space, and one of the really common things that they used to do was build assembly lines in their factory and lay them out and then pull them down again and relocate things to a client's premises. And they needed massive space to be able to do that. But that kind of process has changed, and what they're doing now is more building the equipment that goes on the production line, and so they don't need this vast amount of space to do temporary setup of production lines and then pull them all back down again. So his needs have changed. He doesn't need all of the space that he currently has. And so he, this was quite some time ago, he said, maybe if you're serious about that SuperLab idea, come and talk to me and we can come to some arrangement. And so then just recently, after making the arrangement to buy these KO pick and place machines, all of a sudden it went from being, just adjusting my monitor, I moved everything earlier. It went from being a hypothetical, maybe one day, to I actually need space, like soon, and I'm serious about it. So the conversation with Lachlan progressed, and where it stands at the moment is that we have an in principle agreement that I'm going to lease some space in the front part of his second factory. And so he's got two factories which are kind of long, skinny, rectangular, side by side with an adjoining wall. They are using all of factory 1 and they're currently using all of factory 2. But what he's been doing over the last couple of weeks is moving and rearranging things in the front part of factory 2 to make some space. And this is an exercise that he said that he wants to do anyway because just because of the nature of his business changing, it's about time to rationalize it, look at it, and the things that have just been sitting there because there's no reason to move them, it's probably time to go in and do a bit of spring cleaning, see if they really do still need that stuff. And there are things like, when you've got spare space, obviously, you put things there, and if you don't need the space, there's no reason to move it. So you can just leave it there and years go by and it's still just sitting there. So it's kind of prompted him to look at his factory space and think, maybe we can just rearrange things, and there's old gear there that we haven't used for years. Do we even care? No, just get rid of it. And so he's going through this cleanup process, and we've been talking about how I would take over the front part of factory 2 and set it up as the SuperLab. And right now there is no signed lease, so it's not like at that stage yet, but we've talked about how rates per square meter and which part of the factory I could use and how it would all fit together, and figuring out some of the details like could I get access to their compressed air, because they've got a really big air compressor that they use because they have been building production lines, and production line equipment largely runs on compressed air. They've got a good supply of compressed air in the factory. So we've been talking about arrangements where I can tap into his air supply and then maybe run a local receiver with air filter and everything to run the pick and place machines. So anyway, all of this discussion, this conversation is ongoing and very active at the moment, which is really cool. And what it means is that there is this potential that sometime really, really soon, like potentially in the matter of weeks, not that long from here, I could be setting up a new factory space for the SuperLab. And that is where you come in, and this whole conversation comes in. Now, yes, drink time again. This is where some of these ideas come in. Now, how am I going to do this? Let's start with some screen sharing. So what I've got here in floorplanner.com is several iterations down the track of taking those 4 work zones that I was talking about and just trying to figure out how to juggle them into a shape that is functional and that will fit within the boundaries of the space that Lachlan has available at the front of Factory 2. Make sure there's room for Steve. Oh, there will be. So what we're looking at here is the front. It's probably a bit more than a third, heading towards half, not quite half, of the front part of Factory 2. So if you look at this footprint, you can see there is this wall here, that's an exterior wall, and then this wall here is it's kind of the exterior wall for this factory, but it's the dividing wall between Factory 1 and Factory 2. Factory 2 is over here somewhere. So if I did draw a wall, I'm just gonna, let's see, if we went from, I don't want to save this, but if I just did a thing over here, and let's zoom this right out. I'm just going to give you like a vague feeling of how this fits into the big scheme of things, and then bring that down to there, and oops, no, not that. I've got this all messed up, it's not square. Make that approximately square. This is just to give you some idea of the context of where I'm talking about. So this space on the left is Factory 1, that's what Lachlan is currently occupying. This space here is the back of Factory 2, this is the front of Factory 2. In fact, proportionally it's probably just slightly, yeah, it's probably more. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, whatever the dimensions are, I just did some walls there to give you some sense of it. So from the street, and the street is down here at the bottom, one thing I really don't like about floorplanner.com is the zoom, the way it interacts with zoom. It's kind of frustrating. So this front part, so at the moment this front part of Factory 2, this is a room that exists, but none of these other walls exist. This is all just one huge open factory here. Down the front is a roller door. So this roller door is truck sized. You could get a semi in here just. It's like 2 stories tall or whatever. You know, it's high enough that you can drive a semi in. And in fact, a 14 meter semi trailer. So just the trailer portion, not the tractor or the prime mover, but just the trailer portion of a semi. If you backed it in here, it would fit perfectly up to this area here. Like that's 14.62 meters. So a typical semi is about 14 meters long, give or take. And this is that door is approximately the width of it. So if you're looking for a sense of scale, you could back a semi into here and it would come up to here and it would go almost the width of this little area here. Now, so what I've been, is the current factory line noisy? Is that for the air? Factory line you're talking about? I'm not sure. That's one. Okay, so in terms of compressed air, there are some options there. There is a secondary compressor. So there's another compressor that I can use that they are not currently using, which would give me total isolation from their air supply. And I would also run a local receiver. And I'll get into that. We'll get into that once we get to the assembly room. Now, ignoring the rest of the context of the big factory and looking just at this area, come on, I've got to get that, got to get the zoom just right. All right, so this area here, let's go through these zones in the same order that I talked about them before. R&D lab right here. This front room would be the equivalent of the room that I am sitting in right now. It would be taking my my existing R&D lab and picking it up, and in fact the dimensions are kind of similar. It's a similar, I think the area of this room is probably, I can't remember the numbers, but I think it's somewhere in the order of about 2 square meters bigger than my current room, 2 or 3 square meters bigger. So it is very comparable. I could take almost my existing layout and pick it up and transplant it and drop it into this room and have everything here, which would be awesome. Yeah. So that would be the R&D lab. And then zone 2 that I was talking about earlier is the packing area and stock storage. So down the back here in a more open part of the factory. So this room would be all enclosed, and it currently is all enclosed. So this room actually exists at the moment. You know, it's really typical for factories to have an office area reception at the front and then open space behind. That's how this particular one is set up. So it's got things like this wall that runs across the back here, this wall here, these walls all exist. That wall exists, this back wall exists. There is this door area here. That door frame actually even exists. It's been covered over with plasterboard. Like that back wall is just, it's a timber stud wall with plasterboard on it, and the plasterboard has been put straight over where the door used to be, but there used to be a door right here. So that's convenient. Just pull the plasterboard off and fix that up. So this room, once it is all emptied out of the things that are currently in there and some basic fit out like putting a new floor and painting and that sort of thing, this is where my current lab would end up. And that's right, this is why I went back to this room. It's already a room. It's not a factory space. There's a very big difference. The factory space is open ceiling all the way up to the roof, and it's much more open, a less controlled environment. This room is a proper enclosed room. So that would be the lab, with front door coming in through here, and yeah, so driveway coming up, footpath, so there's a concrete path here to the front door, and coming into it from there. Then inside the more general factory area, back here, what I would do is take all of the racks that I currently have in my garage and relocate them and set up a packing area. So I'd have a packing bench with the scales and all of the supplies, like a big bubble wrap dispenser and boxes, like standard boxes, all flat packed, but they get folded up and assembled as required. So the idea is that all of my current stock would end up on shelves all through this area here, with more shelves across here just for storing all of the stuff that is currently in my garage. So most of what is in my garage would end up in this area, either in the stock storage area or down the front in zone 3. My throat is not doing well today. Which is the mechanical workspace. So, I've got to change that. Lachlan tells me that I cannot call it a spray booth for insurance reasons. What do I call it? Vented box. No, ventilation. I'll call it ventilation box. So it's not a spray booth. It's a box for, it's an open fronted box with an extractor fan so that I can use spray paint in it. And what I would do is put UV lights inside it as well, because what I need is, at the moment what I do is when I make circuit boards that are going into a harsh environment, they all get sprayed with a conformal coating, which makes them essentially waterproof. And the conformal coating has a UV marker in it. So what happens is that you can spray the board with the conformal coating and then when you examine it under a UV light, it glows everywhere that's been coated, and it makes it really easy to spot areas that you haven't done. So part of what I would do in here is build a box for conformal coating of PCBs with UV lighting built into it. So as they're being sprayed, you can see the conformal coating under the UV light. and see where it's all going. So mechanical workspace down the front here would have workbenches and tools, the CNC machine, which will be enclosed. At the moment, my CNC machine, it's basically like a really big desktop CNC machine. It's one of those UCNC 6040s. So it weighs, I don't know, it's like 70 kilos or something, 80 kilos, but it sits on a desk and it's open. I've built like a small enclosure for it, a cover that goes around it to keep the swarf in, but still bits get around. But what I want to do is build a proper box and fully enclose it and put it on wheels. So the CNC would come in here, laser cutter here. I just put a pallet jack in there as like a placeholder, and we'll look at a 3D view of all of this in a minute too. And then that brings us to the fourth zone, and this is what I have been missing up until now. And if I'm going to do this, I want to do it properly. So this is the assembly room. Now, how to achieve this in a factory space is the question. And my friend Steve, so the Steve that you may know as Plasma Steve, in his factory, what he's done is use cool room panels to do internal partitioning. And cool room panels are really, really interesting. So if you haven't seen them before, a cool room panel is what's used for building cool rooms in things like food storage areas. And they come in panels that are typically about 1.1 meters wide, and they can be any length from like 2 meters to 6 meters long. They are typically 50 millimeters thick, although you can get thicker as well, like 75. Typically they are 50 millimeters thick, polystyrene core with a thin sheet of steel, typically like painted or like Colorbond steel, front and back faces. So they are reasonably light, they're reasonably cheap, they snap together, like you can just clip them together. They're self-supporting, they're very rigid, they can span long distances. You can use them as vertical or horizontal. There are brackets that clip them together, and you can very quickly build a structure out of cool room panels that will be partly sound insulating, it's thermally insulating, they seal airtight. So for building something like a clean room, they're really, really good construction material. So the idea would be to build these walls. So this is the back, this would be my back wall. This is what would divide my area from the rest of Lachlan's factory. So to build this dividing wall that runs across the back, can I multi-select in here? Let's see. No, it won't let me multi-select walls. It's interesting. So to build this back wall, the dividing wall, with vertical cool room panels, and this wall here with cool room panels, and then put a roof over this with cool room panels as well. Because this particular part of the factory is, I think it's 6 meter ceiling, 5.8 meter, something like that. It's really tall. It's like a very high clearance area in here. So what I would do is put vertical 2.4 meter cool room panels along here as the wall, and then there would be like a U channel or an L channel bolted to the wall on this side, and then there would be more cool room panels basically just laid on top to form the ceiling of the clean room. And this room here would be the assembly room, and if you're looking from the bottom, it would follow the electronics assembly process. So I've just put benches in here because surprisingly floorplanner.com does not have 3D models for pick and place machines, and I'm terribly disappointed. So what I did was I just put some benches in here and resized them to approximately the size of a pick and place machine. So you start with a solder stencil printer, so stencil storage over here, some shelving for that, a fridge for solder paste, a bench in here with a seat for general stuff like setup. So the idea is that this area in the bottom left is where you would do all the things related to solder paste. The solder paste would be stored, the stencils would be stored. You could set up stencils on the printer here, and then the output of this is PCBs that are ready to feed through pick and place. So they come through here, and I just saw some things about toilet shower things. I'll get to that. That is a really important point. So the and that ties down to these doors. It comes to these doors here as well. So through pick and place, reflow oven coming off the end. Part storage would be here for extra reels and things, and feeder trolleys, so store extra feeders and things along here. Another bench just for general things like loading feeders. So you have a bench there where you can grab feeders and parts and sit down at the bench and get everything set up before they go on the machines. Up in the back corner is, I just put there are no 19-inch server racks in floorplanner.com either in their parts library. Very disappointing. So I just got a standard shelf and made it approximately the dimensions of a server rack, stuck it in the corner there. So boards would come out of the reflow oven and then over on this side, go through ultrasonic cleaning and then washing and drying, and then they would need to go onto trolleys or something for whatever happens after that, for going into packing, for putting into bags and labeling and all of that sort of thing. Now the idea is that this room would be mostly sealed, and air into this room will be fed in through a ventilation system that brings air from from outside the room, runs it through a filter, and then blows it into the room to maintain a bit of positive pressure. And the idea is to stop dust ingress coming in through gaps and cracks and all of those sorts of things. And what we've got here is double doors on the side for easy access, and that's to bring machinery in and out. But I think these doors would almost always be closed. They would very rarely be opened. These doors are only doors that you would use if you're actually rearranging equipment. We've got to get big stuff in and out using a forklift sort of situation. That's not a general pedestrian access through here between the semi-dirty area here and the assembly room here. Access to the assembly room would be through this door here, which is off the back of the R&D lab. Now, what we could do, so yeah, and part of this is not that, so in a previous video, in a previous live stream, I talked about visiting the Hytera factory and how that is like traveling to another planet with airlocks. And yeah, so you step in, you open the outer door, you step into the airlock, you close it, you stand there with your arms out and jets of air blow all over you, and you rotate and it sucks everything out through the floor so that you walk in with no dust on you. And then the inner door opens and then you step in. That's an extreme clean room sort of situation. I'm not talking about going to that extreme. What I'm really talking about here is just trying to make things a step better than a normal workshop environment. It's a way of making sure that there aren't just doors open with stuff blowing in randomly out from the factory space and that sort of thing. It's not like a totally sterile clean room. It is just a room that is going to be cleaner than everything else around it. All right, now getting back to that thing. So there was a comment there about the about access to a toilet. Yeah, and Rocket said mezzanine above the assembly room. Yes, that is something I've been considering. So this is all high span clearance, or high clearance through here. So one possibility is putting a steel beam from this point here all the way along to this point here, mounting it on the wall. So that's a structural support, and then put cross pieces on here, and then a floor could be put on above the assembly room, and then that whole area could be doubled up essentially. We'd have twice as much floor space. Not in terms of, I wouldn't use the second one as an assembly room, but for storage, for example. It could be like a longer term storage area. That is definitely a possibility. So, these doors. Okay, now, if we zoom back out and look at the overall space here, the draw wall, I'm just going to, this is not, yeah, there's actually a slight complication to this, but it's not relevant to you, so I'm not even going to mention it. It doesn't matter. Just the point is that this is not necessarily an accurate representation of the space. It's a conceptual representation. In the back corner up here at the back of Factory 2, there are toilets and there's a little kitchenette and, you know, just those general sorts of facilities that you find in the back of every factory. So, you know, same thing. Where is it? Draw wall. Oh, come on. Draw a wall. Why won't you draw a wall? I can't even get it straight. No. Draw a wall. There. So, and similarly in the back of Factory 1. So there are, you know, it's that standard factory arrangement where you've got a big empty space in the middle, you've got toilets and things at the back, and you've got a like an office area at the front. Very standard factory arrangement. Now the thing is that because I am going to be subleasing some of the space from Lachlan at the front of Factory 2, that's not where any of the toilets or anything are. So so what we've been talking about is arrangements for access to this and how I can get access to the the regular toilet facilities. And there are some other considerations. For example, Lachlan is going to be continuing to use the back part of this factory and this factory. There is a loading dock on the side just over here. And for those of you who are curious, so there's a loading dock. Yeah, where my pick and place machines are right now, please don't go and steal them, but where my pick and place machines are sitting right now is approximately inside that rectangle. So there's a loading dock at the back here on the side of Factory 1. And when in that video that you might have seen of the road trip, where Lachlan and I were unloading the pick and place machines and wheeling them on that little hand-powered forklift, we brought them in through the loading dock just on here, and where we dumped them was this area somewhere in here, give or take. So they're currently sitting there. That is so out of proportion. They are not that big. They're little boxes sitting in here in the factory. But that's where they are. So anyway, the point is, Lachlan will still want to be using the back part of Factory 2. And he's going to need access occasionally. So what we've been talking about is that from the street there is this big roller door, and putting some double doors in this intermediate wall. So this is the wall that divides the front part, which I'll be occupying, from the back part that Lachlan will continue to use. So we'll have double doors here, so that if necessary we can do things like bring a truck up to the roller door here, unload with a forklift, and run the forklift, just drive stuff through. So have clear front to back access from this front loading dock through into his back area here, in case he needs to get anything in and out. And also to make it easy to bring stuff in and out for me. It's a mutually beneficial thing. So that's also how I would get access to the toilets at the back. So there's going to be some crossover. We're going to be working a little bit in each other's space. Eye wash station, Sparky Bear Bomb says, very good idea. Yeah, there need to be some first aid sort of things in here. So yeah, anyway, that's why I don't have to wait until I get home before I go to the toilet. I'll be able to come out through these doors up to the back area where the toilets and things are. What is that? Does that fit? Oh, okay. Is that the jump to home thing? All right. Now that you know the context of how this space fits into the overall factory, one of the questions is, how much space to use. How much do I need? Which comes back to what a couple of people were saying earlier about the taking whatever square meterage you think you need and then multiplying it by 1.5 or 2. Now, to some extent, this space is adjustable because the position of this wall can be moved to take up as much space as necessary based on negotiations with Lachlan. So he still has some equipment in here. He's got a really big CNC machine. There are some benches and there's other equipment. There's a welder just in here, like a spot welder. There are some pallet racks here that they load up with their forklift, like pallet racks that go right up to the ceiling, very high, and lots of other big things. So he wants to set up workbenches in here. There will be like, come on, draw a wall. So on the other, why is this not letting me do this? That's better. So he's probably going to have like an L-shaped work area in here. Benches in here and I think it's just because I don't know how to drive. Floorplanner.com. Yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter what it is. The point is, he's going to have stuff in this area. And so there are a couple of logical places where this wall can end, just based on things like they're not shown on this plan, but there are little vertical buttresses in the wall here at different spacings, and there are expansion joints in the concrete of the floor every however many meters it is, I can't remember. So there are certain places where it makes sense to put this wall, and right now he has a pallet rack right about here somewhere. That'll do. And so going back beyond this particular distance will cause him to have to do more serious rearrangement. Everything up until this point is relatively easy. It's just moving stuff that's currently sitting here doing nothing and shoving it backwards. Going beyond this point could be done, but it would take more commitment from Lachlan's side to actually move a whole bunch of heavy things that probably shouldn't be moved. Or if I didn't need as much space, this wall could come back here somewhere, like it could come across at this point somewhere. And so what this has largely been dictated by, the position of this wall, is the length of this line and having enough clearance around it. Let's go to 3D world. 3D? 3D. All right. Ooh. It's weird with those extra things in there now. So how do I do this? Shift click, that moves it around. Okay, so front room with workbenches and things, similar to my current room, and ideally have a couple of couches and a TV and stuff in there. Because one of the things is that in my current environment, I'm in the back of my house, which means that for lunch, I walk into the lounge room. I've got my full home kitchen and lounge room, and I can sit in front of the TV. There's a backyard here. I can walk outside and stand on the grass and all of that sort of thing. So I've got all of the more personal, what's the term? The non-work related, the more human aspects of the environment are all right here. And so if I move into a factory space, I lose all of that. So I need to be able to account for some of that stuff as well. So, and if I have people come over to visit or whatever, I need somewhere to sit down. So anyway, I just plonked a couple of couches in the corner. The actual layout of this room, this is not in any way final. This is just kind of sticking some stuff in there to get a concept of it. And then from here, so front door coming into the R&D lab, which would be like walking into my existing room, and then 2 doors through. One door would go into the general work area out here. So mechanical, oh, you can see the roller door there. This is represented by just a normal garage size roller door, but in reality this roller door is actually huge. Like it comes up to here somewhere because it's big enough to drive a truck into. So in the front would be the mechanical work area, and I've just got benches here to represent what these would be. So there'd be laser cutter, CNC machine, area for spraying. There's a pedestal drill, some workbenches. So all of the mechanical fabrication stuff that I do jammed into the back of my garage at the moment could be done in here. And then behind that, we've got the stock area and packing, stock storage and packing area, shelving here for all of the boxes of stock that is currently in my garage, plus a bench, like the packing bench with the scales and the computer and label printer, all of that sort of thing. Come on, how do I rotate this? There. So computer, label printer, scales, there'd be like a big roll of bubble wrap and all that sort of thing. So packing area just there, and then more storage over on the other side. There are the double doors at the back that would go through into Lachlan's area of the factory. And then this is a double door access to the clean room or the assembly room. So then, yeah, I just use glass doors on here because they look fancy. One comment Lachlan made was something like, yeah, it looks great in the render. Now you just need to be able to snap, like magic wand it into existence. Yeah, what I'm showing you here is my imagination going wild a little bit. It's the whole dream of, if I have this space and I could fit it out exactly how I wanted, how would I do it? Whether I can achieve this, it's a totally different thing. Oh, I'm not going to be able to afford this all in the short term anyway. So this is kind of like setting a goal of building it out like this. But it's not really going to look like the evil mad scientist lair to start with. And yeah, so these probably wouldn't be glass doors. It'd be nice if they were, but that'd be expensive. It'll probably just be blank doors that'll be closed most of the time. And a door through from the lab into the assembly room. So in the assembly room, from the left to the right, we've got the assembly line. So solder paste, pick and place, reflow oven, and so real storage, part storage. This in the back right corner is where the server rack would be. So that'd be a 19-inch server rack. And then over here, when stuff comes off out of reflow, over this area, I've just used kitchen cabinets to fit this out in the floor plan. Yeah, there'd be ultrasonic cleaning, board washing and drying all in this area, and then boards would go onto a cart or whatever for putting in bags and all of those sorts of things. And what else? I don't know. I kept thinking of more things that I was going to mention, and now I can't remember what they were. Oh yeah, so for board washing, there are board washing machines you can get, but they are really expensive. So I've been thinking about maybe just getting a dishwasher, either a domestic dishwasher or one of those commercial dishwashers. You know, in commercial kitchens they have dishwashers that are like a big stainless steel cube, and the dishes go on a... so in commercial kitchens, all the dishes go into a big plastic tray, which are typically 500 millimeters square, and you've probably seen them in different catering facilities or at, you know, school camp or whatever. It's a tray with a whole lot of vertical posts in it, and you put all the dishes in it, and so everything gets washed in the tray, and the tray goes into the dishwasher. You don't sit there and load every plate into the dishwasher and then let it run and then unload every plate individually. It's too inefficient for a commercial kitchen. So what they do is they have a tray and they load everything into the tray, and then the tray slides along at bench height, and then a big cover comes down over the top of it. The dishwasher runs, the cover lifts off, and then the tray slides along. It's like a production line for food prep. And so one idea is to find a second-hand commercial dishwasher from some place that's gone out of business on Gray's auctions or something, and use a commercial dishwasher and put it in this area somewhere and modify it. Use the physical structure of it, but modify it so that it can be used for PCB washing and drying. Yeah, I could have a tray, so the boards would go through ultrasonic cleaning. They could be on a tray that goes into the dishwasher. You close it, press a button, it washes off all of the ultrasonic cleaning solution, gets them all perfectly clean, and then run a bit of warm air through them for a while, bake them, and have them come out absolutely perfectly clean and perfectly dry at the end of it. So anyway, that would be a fun little project, I think, is building some kind of a PCB. Yeah, Stephen W says commercial ones also run very hot water. Yeah, I wouldn't run it like that. The idea would be to find a commercial dishwasher and use its physical structure, but like replace the control system and everything. Just use the sprayers and things that are inside it, but maybe run one of the domestic. So a lot of domestic dishwashers now only have a connection to the cold tap. They don't have a hot tap connection, and they have a heater in them. So what you would do is get something like an inline heating element, and then run it at a lower temperature. It could be 40 degrees or 50 degrees, whatever it is, and run filtered water into it, and then spray the PCBs down with this filtered water at whatever the appropriate temperature is, and then dry them. So yeah, at the moment what happens is I put my boards through an ultrasonic cleaner, which has a water cleanup PCB cleaning fluid that I get from ChemTools in Sydney, and that removes all of the flux from the PCBs. So inside the ultrasonic cleaner, it heats up it runs warm basically. So there's a heater, it heats up the solution which cleans the PCB. The ultrasonic system agitates it, so when the PCB comes out, all of the flux is gone. The PCB is really clean, but it still has the residue of the flux cleaning solution on it. The flux cleaning solution is water soluble, biodegradable. Like it's fine. It's actually okay to put it down, the sink or something, as long as it's in reasonable quantities. You wouldn't want to be tipping 20 litres down the sink, but it'd be like tipping out 20 litres of soap basically. But just like regular soap, you can rinse it and wash it down the sink. So I rinse the boards in clean water, which removes all of the solder paste, it removes the cleaning fluid, and then I put them in a dehydrator. So in my garage, I've got a food dehydrator, which is basically a box with a heater in it and some drawers. So I put all the PCBs in there, and they can sit in there for a couple of hours, and they just sit there and bake. And and then once they're baked in the dehydrator, they are absolutely perfectly dry. So they come out perfectly dry and perfectly clean. Ooh, I just saw back on a comment that I missed. I haven't been reading most of the comments, unfortunately. Mr. Fixit said, video studio. Yes, that is a really big consideration. How do I make videos in here? That is a question for the front room, really, for the R&D lab. I would need to, not really a video studio, more just cameras and things integrated into this front area so that I can make videos about projects, because most of the videos would be done in here. I'd also want to be doing filming of pick and place and other things in here, but that would be setting up cameras on tripods and pointing it in the appropriate direction. But for convenience of doing things like live streams and making videos of projects, I would want cameras set up in this area here. Okay, what Peter just called out the 20-minute time. Yes. Yeah, oh, Sparky just said, is there a clear coat for the PCBs? Yes, that happens after they have been dried. So that's the next stage. There is PCBs into the ultrasonic cleaner, then they get rinsed, then they get dried, and then for some PCBs, I don't do this for all PCBs, I only do it for the ones for industrial clients where it's going into a bad environment. They then get sprayed with conformal coating, which is a clear coating that goes over the whole thing. Right. Yes. Freddie said, do you have clean power there? Ooh, power is a very good point. Now, there is three-phase power and there is a separate switchboard. Actually, if you look at this part where this pedestal drill is right here, so this is the street side here, this is the dividing wall with the next factory along. The switchboard is in here. So this is where power comes into the building. And there is three-phase power on a, there is a wire basically that is stretched from, it's high up, like near the ceiling. It is stretched from this end wall at the front, or is it from, oh no, it's from here. It is stretched from, so this wall is actually higher. I've shown these walls at like 2.4 meter height, but this is actually about a 6 meter high wall right here. So, and so is this wall here. So there is a wire that goes, and by wire I mean like a stainless steel structural wire, not an electrical wire. There is a wire in a U-bolt mounted up about here somewhere, probably about 5 meters off the ground, and it runs from there, from this point, all the way back, I don't know, back to here somewhere. It's mounted on a beam or something down the back, and there is a three-phase socket hanging on a cable with like a concertina thing. So from down here, you can grab the like the big three-phase outlet, and you can just drag it anywhere you want it to in the factory. And so the idea would be to have that outlet just up here over the back end of the assembly room, and then three-phase power would be available for things like reflow oven and whatever else needs to be in there, because reflow ovens can use a fair bit of power. And the rest of the power, so in terms of billing, I would need to cover all of my own power. So the power for this part of the factory would be separated out in the switchboard here, and that's what I would be paying for. But in terms of clean power, yeah, I will need to use UPSs and all of that sort of thing. Yes. So question, UPS for the PCB line or just PCs? I think I would put UPSs on the pick and place machines as well, but that's going to depend a little bit on the power draw of the servos. So a pick and place machine, if you think about it, is it needs air. It has a PC that powers it, so it's basically just a PC, like a computer that runs it. You need power for that. You need power for the motors, which do the actual physical movement. And then it's got solenoids and things for firing the air to the different feeders and things that it needs. So in terms of power requirement, it's not that ridiculous. It's not like you're running a really big high power thing. The reflow oven is the thing that needs the most power. That takes many, many kilowatts of power. But the pick and place machines don't need that much power. So yeah, if you can feasibly run them off UPSs. Yeah. What else? So Sparky Bear Bomb says, can't you provide power to the machine, not air, etc., and just pause job in the event of power loss? Yeah, I don't know how they would handle power failure. It would come down to what the PC is doing. So if you had the UPS on just the PC that's running it and not on the motors, then it would, I don't know. It's a short answer. I don't know. You would still have compressed air for a while because you'd have it in the reservoir. It just wouldn't be topped up because the compressor wouldn't run again. The PC could keep running if it was on a UPS. The motors would stop if they were not on the UPS. And then the question is it closed loop, in which case it would still know what its position is, or would it think that the motors are still moving and screw itself up? I haven't really even thought through this whole question until now, but it's an interesting thing. Talking about reservoirs, so compressed air. If we go back to this overall view again, back to the 2D view, and fit it in here, the location of the air compressor at the moment is, so Lachlan has a really big air compressor right about here in the far back corner. And he said that if the air requirements and everything work out, he would be okay with me using their air compressor. So the one they've got back here is really big, and they run hoses to all different places around the factory to provide air to different things. And even though it's at the extreme diagonal corner, what I could do is use their air supply. So take air from the compressor here and have it available in here for the pick and place machines. But the problem is that long air hoses are lossy. It's like resistance. It's like voltage drop in a wire. You lose pressure and flow and all of those sorts of things. So one option is to, well, there are a few options. One thing I'm really thinking about doing is having a local reservoir. It's called a receiver, so the air receiver. So what I would do is in this area under here, possibly even under a bench, like I'm going to have to build frames. So all of this is going to need custom bench work in here for the pick and place machines. What I could do is think of it as being like a capacitor. If you've got an output decoupling cap on a power supply, you put a big capacitor on the back of it so that if there are transients on the current that you're drawing, you are taking energy from the capacitor, and that gives you some decoupling from the voltage regulator. In the same sort of way, what you can do is put an air receiver, which is a big tank. It's basically taking another tank from like an air compressor tank, and your output from the air compressor feeds into the second tank, and you need valves and stuff to make it all work. But that's all solvable. So what you do is you feed compressed air into the second tank, or the receiver, and that is where you draw the compressed air from for whatever your machinery is. So what I would like to do is put a receiver in the room right here, in the assembly room, and mount it under these benches. So the air supply from the compressor, wherever it happens to be, it could be right down in the back corner of the factory, it could be out here in this area here. At the moment there is actually an air compressor sitting right here, like where this bench is, there is an air compressor just there. And I could use that compressor as well. So wherever the original source of the air is, it would come in on a compressed air line into the receiver, and the receiver would be sitting right here near the pick and place machines. And then the output of that would, so what you would do is have a filter and a dryer. So you need dry air for the pick and place machines. So what you would have is a local reservoir of compressed air within a few meters of the machines right here, and then an outlet manifold that allows the compressed air to go to each of the machines. And I think that is probably a fairly good way to do it, because it means that there's a really good local supply and it provides some decoupling from whatever else is going on in the air system in the factory. So if in the back of the factory they're doing something totally different, they're running a robot or running a bit of equipment on an assembly line and it's using air, then I'm getting the benefit of the compressed air source, but I'm isolated from anything else that might be going on because I'd have the local receiver here which is supplying the air. Oh, Scott says hang the receiver from the ceiling. Oh, interesting. I don't know. I'd like to get it out of the way. I'd like the idea of having it under the bench so that it's out of sight, and then bringing air up to each of the machines from underneath. I think it would keep it out of the way. Oh, Mr. Fixit said, what is the HVAC? Gavin Jackson said catenary. I never know how to pronounce this word. Is it catenary or catenary? I've always thought of it was catenary. So catenary is the overhead line that you can drag stuff along. Yes. So Mr. Fixit said, what is the HVAC? At the moment, there isn't any. There's some ventilation fans and things for this front area. And from what I'm told, the temperature in this factory is not particularly bad. It tends to be okay. So that is part of the reason for this zone isolation as well. And building this room out of cool room panels allows me to have total control over the environment in here. So there are really 3 different temperature zones or levels of control here. This outer room is the least controlled. And this is where there would just be mechanical stuff and boxes for stock storage. This front room has more control. It's just plasterboard walls and that sort of thing, but that's the general environment to work in. And then this zone here would have the most control. And this is inside the room that would be made out of the cool room panels. So potentially this could be controlled in terms of its temperature and humidity. And I could put a HEPA filter in here and keep all the dust level down and that sort of thing. But in terms of the actual equipment to do the HVAC, I don't really have that sorted yet. Spooky says, it's fine, it's Melbourne, they don't have summer. No. Mr. Fixit said, you definitely need a refrigerated dehumidifier in the airline after the reservoir. Yep. Water drain goes at the bottom of the drop line. True. So I need to think about where the water will go out of the reservoir. Now, in terms of getting water out of here, we can get water out at the front of the building. So if I can get a pipe out, we can dump it out the front here into the drain. So just like water runoff sort of stuff. But getting it there, that is a very good point, Scott. Thanks for pointing that out. If the receiver is mounted under the benches here, where does the drain go? Yeah, I can't really run a pipe and have fall on the pipe going from there to here because I've got doors in the way everywhere. Like I can't loop the pipe up over a door or anything like that. So how do I get it there? I don't know. That's a good question. I'm going to have to ponder that one. Yes. Steve doesn't look impressed with the plans. Yeah, he's turning his back on it. Jeremiah says, I imagine there is QA space as well. So yes, one of the big questions is what to do with boards after they go through here and packing, like testing sort of stuff. At the moment, all of that function happens in the lab area. But you are right, Jeremiah, that I should... now, this is also a bit of a balancing act because I'm going to be paying per square meter for this. This is not going to be cheap. This whole thing, if we back it out a little bit, this whole area here, up to this back wall, it's somewhere in the order of 130 square meters. And that is a bit to be paying rent on. Now, if the rent was not a problem, what I would do is push that wall further back, and then I could have dedicated areas for things like packaging sort of stuff. Because I've got packing here, as in taking products and sticking them in boxes and posting them out. But what I do not have anywhere in any of this space is taking PCBs, putting them into anti-static bags, sealing them, putting the labels on them, all of that sort of thing. That would be done probably either in the packing area or there's probably going to end up being a bench in the middle here somewhere. Like in my current arrangement, I've got Let's see if I can zoom without wrecking everything. Let's add, oh no, let's just, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to copy that, drag it in here. All right, so, and then what do I do? Rotate it that way and make it a bit bigger. So there could, similar to what I have with my current arrangement. Now let's go back to the 3D view. So with my current arrangement, what I have is the bench that you can see, no, wrong one, I want the side camera. Side camera, you can see the bench here, which comes all the way along this wall, and it's L-shaped, so it goes down this wall, and then it goes all the way along that wall. And then in the middle, I've got the general workbench area. And when I'm doing things like taking PCBs that I've assembled and putting them into anti-static bags and putting labels on them, that's what the general central workbench is for. It's a multi-purpose bench. And so this would essentially be the same thing. So there isn't really a strict demarcation between the the R&D lab only being used for R&D and it also being used for manufacturing. So I suppose the way to think about this is that it's like, imagine, it's like my building a personal dream lab. It is having all, I'm not really setting this up to have a whole bunch of people working there. I'm really setting this up to have me working there with access to everything that I need. So if I want to do boards, I can walk into the assembly room, pick and place machines are there, everything is clean, it's all set up. I can run a bunch of boards through. And if I want to ship some orders, I walk into the packing area, the stock is all there, pack it, stick it in boxes and take it to the post office. If I want to do mechanical work, I've got benches here, I've got tools I can walk in. If I want to do computer work and R&D and that sort of thing, there's a room here to do it in. So it's not really a place that's being set up for a whole lot of tasks to be done simultaneously. It's more a sequence of tasks to be done by me and maybe one or two other people helping from time to time, like Tommy, who I get helping, my son, who I get helping doing assembly. It's really good now because what I can do is have parts on a board, but without any of the through-hole stuff, like connectors and headers and things, and I can just pass them all to him and say, here, put headers on all these boards, and he sits there and does it. It's fantastic. Yeah. Yes. Ooh. Don from NZ said, the timed water drain will push water out with air pressure through a 10mm tube. And as Scott says, it does leave room to add employees if needed though. Yes. So what I could do is have someone take over doing order shipping, for example. And this dedicated space is then available for them to do that without being in the way of anything else or me getting in their way. Or if I have someone coming in to do some mechanical work, mechanical fabrication, which my son Tom is really interested in, he could be doing work in here. And I could have a second person in here doing assembly or R&D or whatever. And someone could be in here running pick and place machines. So yes, it could be used as a parallelizable space without expanding the footprint. But it's just that the way I'm thinking of this initially is taking what I currently do as a single Peter says 1 minute, is taking what I do as a single person, like an individual person working in this environment, and not making it so big that it's unwieldy. I don't want to have to walk like miles to get to a dedicated space for a particular purpose if that space can be done right here where I do other things, but expanding it enough that I'm not in the current situation where everything is jammed in and I just can't fit any more things. And I have things sitting in my light tent because there is no flat space to put it down. And there are just things everywhere. I need to have a few more dedicated spaces for things. So, oh, Sparky says, packing while the CNC is running doesn't sound that nice. Yeah, it wouldn't be. But things like the CNC is... Peter's telling me to go. Things like the CNC are tools that are really, really super useful for specific things, but I don't use them every day. In fact, I don't use it every week. It can sit there turned off, but having it there when the time comes that I want to cut a bunch of holes in plastic enclosures, or I need to make a custom part for fixing the pick and place machine, or whatever it happens to be, having that capability locally and walk up ready is really, really useful, reducing the friction of doing those things. So what I'm really aiming at here is creating an environment where there is very little friction for anything that I want to do. So I want to do a thing, there is somewhere to do it, and the tools are there to do it. So it's kind of like building a hacker space for one person. And yes, I know this is incredibly selfish and very ambitious. It is the dream. But as I said before, this is just a dream. Parts of this, I don't actually expect that what I've got here in this 3D render is magically going to happen anytime soon. This is thinking through, I have the opportunity to use this space. If I do go ahead with all of this and everything works out and the dream happened, how could it look? And then parts of this I will be able to do. I won't be able to do it all, but at least little parts of it, as they become more important, I will be able to do. And in the short term, at least, just transplanting my lab into this area and having overflow space and very, very importantly, getting things out of my house so that we've got a garage again, that is a win. Even without all of the fancy stuff that I've been talking about. Even without building this dedicated, clean assembly room. If it was just the front room and some extra space here for storage and shelving and benches, that is a big win compared to my current situation. So this is kind of the end goal of where I'd like to work towards as I can raise the funds and all of that sort of thing to do it. There's going to be some reasonably significant initial expense, because things like buying the cool room panels to do all of these walls, it's probably going to cost me about $4,000 just to build the walls. So it's yeah, and yeah. Anyway, now, Sparky says, make a second floor for the R&D space and more packing space. Yeah, I kind of am thinking ahead a little bit in that it's wasting almost half the floor space to just do everything down here on the concrete slab and not make use of all of the room that's above. So when building these walls here, the clean room, I do kind of like the idea of thinking ahead and putting a beam that runs basically where you see this black line running along here, put a steel beam from here running to there, so that structurally in future I could stick a mezzanine up on here if I had to. But putting that beam in after these walls are built, that'd be really, really awkward. So if I can arrange it so that so that I can put the beam in place initially, then I would like to do that. Extra expense and effort up front, but then maybe a year or two down the track, if I wanted to add a mezzanine on here, having that beam in place could save a whole lot of heartache. Yeah. Better to do it now. than later. Okay, well, I am going to go. Oh, Mr. Fixit said, couch with a pull-out sleeper, naps rejuvenate. Yes, that's a good idea. Having one of these long enough to actually lie down and have a nap is a good idea. Sparky Bear Bomb says, unrelated, is there any more home automation videos coming? The answer is yes, there is, definitely. And in fact, I was just chatting by email to someone this morning about a video, because there is a video that I'm working on in relation to the 2-year series that exactly answers the question, which is kind of frustrating because I had this question in email. It was about the 2-year WB3S module and Tasmoda and compatibility, and the short answer is no, it is not Tasmoda compatible. And the whole question was around taking a device that has a WB3S in it and how do you make that run Tasmoda. The video I'm working on is exactly how to do that, like that exact module and how you solve that problem. But the video isn't finished yet. And it'd be really nice to be able to just say, go and check this video. But it's it's in progress. Hopefully soon. All right. Now, I am going to go. Thank you very much for coming along. It has been fun, and I am going to try to get back to some home automation videos because, yeah, it kind of frustrates me that I haven't been doing those recently. I do want to do it. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thank you for all of your suggestions. And I know that I have missed probably 80% of the comments and suggestions and things that have been in the chat. While I've just been rambling, I've only been glancing across occasionally. I'm going to try to read through and pick up ideas and things. But also, jump into Discord, into the SuperLab planning topic. And I'm going to post, what I might do is post screenshots of like the floor planner stuff that I've got here, and that can be a place for people to put in feedback and suggestions and things as well, which would be really cool. So thank you very much. Have a fantastic weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.